It's really intense to be the guest in someone else's legacy. You want to create drama, but you don't want to be disingenuous to who these men were. That balance of like, oh man, I hope people don't get like mad at me, that's not a thing I'd ever interfaced with. I was an assistant in TV development and sort of like, I was getting more responsibility, like maybe on my way to being like a scripted coordinator and doing not even better things, but like making slightly more money. I was just finding that my time to write was vanishing as I got more responsibility, and was sort of faced with that. Many of us have been there. It's like, okay, do I kind of have to put my psychological income over real income?
I mean, what do you mean by psychological income?
Psychological income, that I am being paid to, I'm being like paid in growth, or I'm being given access. All of these things that sort of better your life but aren't money. So I had heard through a friend of a friend that Bad Robot was hiring a receptionist, which was like totally less money, like, you know, way more of a commute. But, you know, I'd grown up idolizing that place. I mean, Lost is certainly like it is like the singular moment I fell in love with television. So I interviewed there, got the job there, and yeah, became the receptionist for a number of years at Bad Robot, which in the funniest way is like the largest pivot in my career, because I was around people that were really inspiring. You know, having been like an assistant for years, I could be a receptionist kind of with my eyes closed. I'm like, do you want a coffee? It's like, great.
Job done, yeah, for the
like
day.
smile, like cool, keep this area clean. The irony in sort of being on this side of my career as I meet people, 90% of people I'm like, oh, I've met you before, but I got you coffee. But JJ in particular is just one where, I mean, I learned so much watching him work. They say don't meet your heroes, and he is just the antithesis to that adage. Has always been so kind and generous, and also just like his brain is, I am routinely in awe of that. That is how it all started. I had more time to write, so I was getting things done, which means I was sharing things, which means I was starting to get meetings, and I was taking sick days. And once I got to the point where I was like, I really don't want Bad Robot to think I have a terminal illness based on how many times I've had to leave. You know, I came clean and was like, hey, you know, there's, you know, I might get a manager and things are, you know, whatever. And they were like, oh my God, like, congratulations. Like, let's read your stuff. And, you know, and that's cool. That was the turn. Bad Robot's incredible sort of, you know, like, even though this is not for us, what they gave us was like, well, we're going to send you to our favorite managers.
That's amazing.
And that's like...
And with their endorsement, that's everything.
You know, I think everybody read within 48 hours, which is rare. And I'm with my same manager, you know, from like 10 years ago. I'd only known his name, like, plus accolade, like Jesse Brown, first black naval aviator. Right. And that's all. I didn't know, you know, how he came to pass. I didn't know about his relationship with Tom Hudner, even where he was from or any of that, but just fell in love with who Jesse was through the process of getting to make this. It's really intense to be the guest in someone else's legacy, you know, and the families, you know, are wonderful, and we involved them early in this process. You know, Devotion is based on a book by Adam Makos of the same title. You know, Adam interviewed all the families and sort of got all of these things together. So we had a really good foundation, you know, to pull from in telling that story. You want to create drama, but you don't want to be disingenuous to who these men were. It was way more of a tightrope than I'm used to as a writer. But that balance of like, oh man, I hope people don't get like mad at me, like that's not a thing I'd ever interfaced with. And again, no one was mad. But having to think about that is just a different exercise. My dad was a naval aviator 30 years after Jesse. You know, I grew up in Virginia Beach, Pensacola, Virginia Beach. We moved around kind of a bunch between the Navy community. But like Jesse, he was 14 years old, saw a plane at an air show and was like, I think this is what I want to do, and kind of didn't understand or care where the challenges would be in doing that. And 15 years later found himself as the second African-American Blue Angel. So that sort of thread of relentless dream chasing is sort of in me from him, and then
Yeah.
from him in a weird way from Jesse. So
Blue Angel?
he's so much cooler than me.
Well, wait. I'm going to show something. Let's show you being cool.
Oh my God.
Check this out. Check this out. Watch what he's about to do. Now, you're not flying. You're a passenger, right?
I am a passenger.
Now, I don't know if we get the full experience, but tell us, you're pulling like
Oh, boy.
7 Gs?
So, my dad said he would disown me if we couldn't break 7 Gs without throwing up or blacking out. So we pulled 7.2 just to make
Wow.
sure we had some space for clearance.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the oddity from the get was like the overlap between Jesse's life and my dad's life, just circumstantially, was pretty overwhelming. Even 30 years apart, like some of the things that my dad went through, like Jesse experienced first, and you see a lot of that. I felt a lot of that. So I brought him on as a consultant, like officially.
Oh.
And he was important at every step of the way, and it's not just the like, hey, when you're making like a dive and what's the angle of attack and where's the, like, it wasn't just that kind of stuff, but it was like, hey, when you told mom you were going away for the first time, like, what did that feel like? When you felt super alone and needed quiet on the ship, even though you are innately already alone, where do you go? So it was a lot of that sort of the emotional touch points of Jesse's story that I looked for with him. And that helped me come back to Jonathan and Christina, who played Daisy, and actually like speak to some of those things with a little more authenticity.
Was your dad helpful from that, like the mindset of someone who just wants to do their job, but they also have this responsibility as the first or the second?
In a weird way, that was more Jonathan and I. I think what we most related to in Jesse, and then also I felt like this is how we kind of tell this 1950 story today, is we all, in our own right, have been, the first in our family is to do X, the first in our community to do Y. But the funny thing is, as we can all pretty much say, you don't do that because of its context. The context comes after. You do it because like you love something, you do it because you're invested in something, you care about something, you're inspired by something. And that was more the story we were trying to tell with Jesse, which is also why the movie is not like traditional and biopic, structure. It was important for Jonathan and I to like, okay, we can show how hard it was, we can show where he came from, but let's do it in a way that feels really modern. Jesse just wanted to fly, and he boils the whole thing down in like one line. Always wanted to fly, wanted to fly where the best pilots flew. That was the Navy. It's oddly, rarely the thing that makes us do it, but it's the thing you realize as it's happening, like, oh, okay, maybe my journey is meaningful for others. But it started with like just wanting to be a part of it. It's really easy to get in your own head about like, what is this adding to the conversation and what, and all of that stuff is to a certain extent important. But I never wanted messaging to be louder than character. There are certainly things that I wanted to exercise through Jesse's voice, but I made sure that he was in a position to actually earnestly say those things, instead of forcing them out of his mouth. Because I think you can feel when a movie is being disingenuous in that way. But there are so many period pieces where I wish the black character could have just said X, and we put Jesse in those moments for us to be able to say those things. There really wasn't a process of what does this mean contextually. It started with character. You see how that feels, you see how that sounds, then you start to see context. You're like, oh, okay, like this might be a movie where it's good to make sure that we address white saviordom and like derail it. But it wasn't like, it didn't start with like, you know what I'm gonna do in devotion? Like I'm gonna have that conversation. Because I think, that's where things get a little clunky. I mean, look, Jonathan says it the best, and it is just a simple way to say it. We just wanted to tell the truth.